dear learners, welcome to this discussion on this next module of the course. This module is on English for Journalists. This module is a part of the course on Introduction to Functional English. Here, we shall try to discuss the communication skills or the linguistic skills which are required by a journalist. A century ago, journalistic profession was associated solely with newspapers and news writing. But nowadays, journalists' work can be found in different media platforms such as radio, television, as well as the internet. In the words of Malcolm X, the media is the most powerful entity on earth because they can control the minds of the masses. So with these words, we can realize the power in the pen of the journalists as well as the amount of responsibility that they must take on. Hence, a command over language, especially the English language, is very much required to be an effective journalist. Here, we will try to introduce you to the role of journalists in today's society. We shall focus on the skills required to be an effective news presenter or a news anchor. We will also familiarize you with the structure of a news story and the style of journalistic writings, including the writing of effective headlines. So, let us take a look on the objectives of this module. First of all, we will try to describe the role of journalists in present-day context. We shall discuss the structure of a news story. We will also try to point out the idea behind creating effective headlines. We will also try to discuss how to use the English language correctly and effectively while you are working on the field as a media person. We will also try to enlist the various linguistic skills that are required by a journalist for effective communication with the audience. Now let us start with the role of journalists in today's society. Journalism plays a very important role in democratic societies that all of us know. One of its main purpose is to supply the voters with information they need to make informed choices. For example, about how they are going to vote in an election. Okay? The democratic principle of freedom of speech, which gives freedom or right to the people to express their views and opinions freely, it is also enabled by a free and independent media. So media serves an important role in providing investigative reports, debates, discussions, background information, and different analysis to any major events in the society. So media brings to limelight varied issues of concern that need to be dealt with. Media also serves information today in the process that combines entertainment with the means of education. Okay? So this is also called infotainment. The first and important function or task of a journalist is information dissemination. The journalists, they gather different information through various methods such as research, interviews, through observation, and after gathering all this information from the field, they try to provide this information to the public. And to perform this particular function, the knowledge of English language is very, very important. So while providing information and news, they have to pen down all the information that they have gathered through research and observation and other methods. And for that, the language skill will be required by them. The second task is keeping objectivity and fairness. A journalist have to present their news and information in a very objective manner, in a very unbiased manner, and they have to keep their reports devoid of their personal opinion or personal biasness. Now again, media is also called as the public watchdog. Media have to act as the fourth pillar or watchdog of the society. They conduct the function of monitoring the actions of the government, the actions of the big corporate houses and other powerful entities of the society. And they provide the information from these entities to the public. and they keep a watch on all these powerful bodies of the society. So dear learners, the next point is, keeping an eye on democracy and public awareness. So journalists provide citizens with the required information to make an informed decision. We can take the example of the kind of role journalists play during the elections. They provide all the information about what is happening around the society, about the points which are taken by a particular politician, and based upon all this information, the citizen is able to take an informed decision, for example, whom to vote. Okay. The next function could be giving voice to the marginalized. So journalists give a platform to the marginalized communities so that their voices could be heard. The last point, but not the least, that we can discuss as a task performed by the journalists is that they act as a bridge between the society and the government. The journalists, they act as intermediaries. They facilitate the flow of information and they make people aware of the political process. So the journalists function as the eyes and ears of any newspaper or any channel, or we can say any media organization. They are assigned to cover different events or different happenings that are going on around in the community, in the nearby area, or in the world. And for that, the journalists need to have the confidence to dig out the information from anywhere and everywhere. So a good knowledge of the English language would help them in gathering information from different areas of the world. It would also provide them access to global media platforms. The journalists have to be, lucid speakers. So a command over the English language could be helpful in this context. While writing or presenting the news, they have to use their pen very cautiously. After they thoroughly research the subject area, they use the information to write a piece for their organization, be it the newspaper or radio or television or the internet. So journalists, they perform the function of presenting the news in the newspaper, or in the radio or television, they perform the function of an anchor or a host. And dear learners, to perform all these roles effectively, they have to have a good command over the language of presentation, and especially English, because English is a global language. Now let us discuss about the function of journalists as anchor. Very often we find that journalists play the role of anchor or host or presenter, and they play a very important role in the presentation of a particular event or a particular program, and their skills add to the brand value and the credibility of the organization. So the anchors have a big responsibility in keeping the credibility of their organization in the public eye. So the anchors, they act as connectors or mediators between the media house and the audience. So it is very important for the anchors to have a basic knowledge of the current affairs, history, geography, and other related areas, along with having an insight into the current national and international issues. Some of the key aspects of anchoring that we can discuss here could be confidence. The anchors should exude confidence. They have to project credibility and inspire trust among their audience. So it is important to be mindful of the thin line between being confident and overconfident, okay, which might, give some negative impact instead. So the next point, dear learners, is very important, that is body language. So body language is a part of non-verbal communication, and it plays a very important role while a media person is presenting the information or news or any other program through their anchoring. So while anchoring for any program, as a media person, as an anchor, you have to maintain an open posture. You have to make appropriate gestures using your hands or eyes or facial expressions. And you have to maintain a good eye contact during your entire conversation. Another important aspect is the voice modulation. Okay? Voice modulation is done to change the different properties of your voice, and it is very important to keep an eye on the change in the pitch of your voice, the stress, the loudness of your voice, because the loudness and the pitch and the stress of your voice could give a meaning of your mood or the appeal of what you are trying to convey. The next important point is the command over language. A good command over the language of presentation and proper pronunciation are very essential to be a good anchor. The ability of multitasking, or the ability of handling different multiple responsibilities at one time, is very important and effective for an anchor, because while presenting a news or while acting as an anchor for a particular program, you have to be wearing you have to wear a earpiece, and at the same time you have to be very mindful of the position of the cameras, the person who is doing the program with you, your co-presenter, or maybe the person whom you are interviewing. So the ability of multitasking is important for an anchor. The ability of storytelling is also important. You have to be able to narrate the information in a very captivating manner, so that you are able to grab the attention of your audience and to leave an lasting impression on your audience. The next important point is emotional intelligence. It basically involves the understanding and managing of your emotions on your own, and it is important for an anchor because while presenting any information, the anchor should be aware of one's emotions. They should be able to respond emphatically to your co-presenter or the person whom you might be interviewing, okay, and while maintaining your own calmness. Now let us move on to the next topic of today's discussion, that is the knowledge of English language for journalists. So journalists, they have the major responsibility of helping people know and understand what is happening around the world. That is the basic function or basic duty of a journalist, to disseminate the information regarding what is happening around the world. And in order to perform this duty in an effective manner, a journalist have to convey the information in a very simple language so that it can be understood by everyone. Okay, so for this purpose, the journalists have to use simple terms and simple language, and they have to translate the complicated words, the complicated terms and phrases to simple language which can be understood by the audience and which are preferred by the audience. It is important for the journalist to have credible sources for getting their information and getting their stories, because getting information from the credible sources increases the credibility of the journalistic writings. So dear learners, we can consider the following points as linguistic skills which are required by a journalist. The first being grammar and syntax. A good understanding of grammatical rules is very important. So another linguistic skill required by a journalist is an extensive vocabulary. This helps the journalist in choosing the proper words to convey their message. So a journalist must be familiar with certain terms which are used again and again in media. For example, lead, inverted pyramid, beat, byline, dateline, scoop, cuttings. These are the words which as a journalist you will come across again and again. So a good understanding of these words is very essential to be an effective journalist. The journalistic writings, they require a specific writing style which is objective in manner and which is very concise. So a journalist has to be able to write appropriate headlines as well, because if you effectively write all these, the headline, the lead and the body of the news, then it will be easier for the audience to understand that particular news item. And the news items are written in an inverted pyramid style, which is a specific style to write a news item in a newspaper. So all these terms I will elaborate them. The journalist have to understand the news values. Okay, so these news values they are used to identify and prioritize the newsworthy stories. So news values are basically the criteria which help the journalists or the editors to decide whether this particular happening or this particular event needs to be followed up, or they could be used in the newspaper or not. So as a journalist, you have to be very proficient in conducting efficient research, because research is very important to gather accurate information about any happening. Okay, so this would involve building credible sources. To get credible news, over the years you have to build your credible sources, okay, so that you get accurate information. Then it is the responsibility of the journalist to verify these facts and to cross-reference this information before publishing in the newspaper or broadcasting in the radio or television or the internet. So journalists have to be able to engage their audience or their readers through their storytelling techniques, through their storytelling skills. So this is an important skill that has to be adapted by the journalists to be effective. So dear learners, now let us see the correct use of words and sentences, which is very important in a journalistic writing. So when you are writing for a newspaper or a radio or a television channel or the internet, you should be able to incorporate the words and sentences that provide maximum amount of understanding with minimum risk of confusion. So you have to use the words and sentences which are very simple. The sentences should be very short and crisp. So it is suggested that a journalist should not use more than 20 words in one sentence, okay, except in some special cases. The length of the sentence determines the understandability of a particular sentence. So it is better to limit each sentence to no more than 3 ideas. The words used by you in the story would make it easy to understand, isn't it? So some complex words should be avoided, which might tend to create more confusion among its readers. You should not use unnecessary adjectives or adverbs. And if you are trying to use some new words, you have to be very careful. You should first ponder upon whether it will be understood by the readers or not. Now let us come to the structure of a particular news story, how it is constructed, how it is styled. So in order to understand the structure of a news story, we have to see the different elements of a news story. The first is the headline. So headline is basically the title of the news story, and it introduces and summarizes the entire news story, the entire happening. So we will discuss about writing headlines in the next section of this particular module. Another element of a news story is the byline or the credit line. So it is written differently in different newspapers. They have their own writing styles. So this particular byline or credit line, it gives credit to the reporter or the writer of a particular news item, or you can say the author of the news story gets credit in this byline or credit line. So for example, if you see a newspaper, if you see a news story in a newspaper, you will come across something such as by a staff reporter, or from our special correspondent, okay, or from Vikram Mehta. So these are some examples, some styles in which the credit line or byline is written in a newspaper. The next element is the date line. So date line in a news story, it carries 2 important information: the place of the happening and the date of the event. Okay, so if you get a newspaper and see the date lines of different news stories, you will come across something like Guwahati May 14, or New Delhi, July 13. Okay, so in this way you will find the date line at the beginning of a news story. The next element is the lead of the news story. So the lead, it carries the most important information about the news item. Okay, we will discuss the lead in the next paragraph in details. The body of the news item is another element. It is basically the middle part of the story, which carries in details whatever is mentioned in the lead. The news stories are written using 5 W's and 1 H. The first paragraph, or the lead that we are talking about, it is the first paragraph of a news story, and it carries the 5 W's and 1 H. Okay, the 5 W's means who, what, when, where, how, and why, and the 1 H means how. So these questions are answered in the lead. Who is involved, what is happening, when it happened, where it happened, why it happened, and how it happened. All these questions are answered in the very beginning or the first part of the news story, and it is called the lead of a news item. So here you can see how important it is to have a knowledge of the English language to write out the entire lead in a very effective manner and in a simple language. So another point that needs to be understood here, the inverted pyramid style. So this is the style in which the news items are prepared. Okay, in this style the news story is prepared according to the order of importance of the information. So the first paragraph, which is the intro or the lead, it carries the most important information about the happening. Okay, so it is followed by the body of the news item, which includes the other related information, and in that way, in the decreasing order of importance, a particular news story is prepared. As you can see in the diagram given in your slide here, the lead of the base of the pyramid is at the up, which means the most important items are at the very beginning, and slowly the order of importance, according to decreasing order of importance, the news story is styled. Okay, now dear learners, let's move on to discussing how to write an effective headline. Okay, so here we must try to understand what a headline is. So you must have seen in a newspaper that every piece of writing, every news story, it has a headline. So whenever we come across a piece of writing in our day-to-day life, we always see that be it an academic writing or a journalistic writing, a headline is always required, because the headline, it reflects the idea behind the story. It gives a gist of the story. So in a media organization, headlines are mostly written by copy editors or a sub-editor. So headlines are most widely read part of the newspaper, it is said. As in the morning you might have seen that many people are very busy, and hence they just scan the headlines, and if something that catches their eyes, if the headline is very catchy, then a busy reader would give importance to that particular news story and scan through the news item. So hence it is important to write an effective and attractive headline which gives a good meaning, good idea about the news item. After understanding the news story thoroughly only, you would be able to frame a good headline. So to frame an effective headline, you should keep in mind a few things, such as keeping the headline short and simple. You have to be very specific while framing a headline. For example, I have given one example here. As you can see, India logs 92 fresh COVID cases. You can see how simple it is and how much information it conveys. Okay. The next point is to avoid jargons and cliches. That means you should avoid high sounding words, complex words which cannot be understood by common people. Okay. So it is important to use active voice. As you can see, the examples given here in your slides, 2024 US presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy opines on cause of Capitol riot. You can see how the active voice is used here. It is not written in passive voice. Writing your headline in active voice makes it more effective, makes it more easy to understand, and it makes it more appealing. Okay. Another example here is Google warns advertisers about third-party cookies. It is easy to understand because of the use of active voice. Our knowledge of tenses are also very important, as you should use only present tense for past events while writing headlines. For example, as you can see here, PM distributes 70,000 recruitment letters. Okay, so as you can see that this event has taken place in the past, maybe a few days back or 2 days back or 3 days back, but here we are writing it in present tense. PM distributes. Okay, the next point is to use to, the word to, for future events. If you are referring to future events, it is better to use the word to. For example, ODI World Cup, India to play Pakistan on October 15th. October 15th is happening in the future. The India is going to play Pakistan in the future, in the coming days, and to make that understandable, we are using the word to. The next point is use only popular or well-known abbreviations or acronyms. While using abbreviations, be very careful. Do not use abbreviations which are unknown to people, which are not common. Okay. For example, here we are using IMD predicts heavy rainfall in northeastern region. So everybody knows what IMD is, Indian Meteorological Department, isn't it? So it is safe to use IMD. Okay. Next is do not use names unless the person is very well known. Okay. If something happens to your neighbor, if some event involves your somebody which is in your neighbor who is not very well known, nobody will, if you use that person's name, the readers won't be able to understand. For example, it is wrong to say Carlos is electrocuted. Okay, nobody knows who Carlos is, isn't it? So it is better to say plumber electrocuted. Okay, that way people will understand that a plumber in that particular area met with an accident. Okay. Then again, it is important to use comma in the place of the word and. Instead of using and, we can use a comma. Example has been given here. As you can see, 9 killed, 10 injured in militant attack in Manipur. So we are not saying 9 killed and 10 injured. We are just using a comma, which makes the headline look clean and attractive. Again, you should avoid beginning the headlines with a verb, and do not use articles such as a, and, the. So it is wrong to say a fire hits the Lonavala area in Mumbai. Instead, you should say fire hits Lonavala area in Mumbai. Okay, which sounds more attractive or effective. And the next point is do not capitalize each word. As you can see in all the headlines that I have mentioned here, only the proper nouns are capitalized, or the first letter of the sentence, the first letter of the headline is capitalized, others are in small letters. So coming to the end part of our discussion today, so we can say that headlines can be classified based on their structure, their context, their presentation, their positioning. Okay, so there are different types of headlines such as label headlines, descriptive headlines, comment headlines, quotation headlines, questions headlines. So you can also note here that headlines of a feature story or a soft story is a little different from that of a hard news item. Okay, the feature news stories are mostly written in a conversational manner. The headlines of feature news stories or soft stories, they are written in conversational and engaging styles. Okay, so now we have come to the end of this particular module. So in this module, we have tried to discuss the linguistic skills required by a journalist in the present day context, and we have also tried to discuss the techniques to write a good headline, and how to prepare a news story, how to take an effective interview, and how to prepare oneself for effective anchoring. Okay, so these are some of the linguistic skills that every aspiring journalists need to know to progress in their profession. So I hope you enjoyed this particular module. We will see you again in the next module. Till then, bye and all the best.